Okay, so I have pulled out some phthalo blue on my palette. Now, here it is. And you can see I've placed it next to my ultramarine blue. It's much warmer and it has high intensity. So these gray tones that I have here with my ultramarine, if I had made that with phthalo blue, it would be much, much brighter, more of like an aqua color. So let's get back in there. Now, even though my proportions here are not quite right, there's some issues. I am going to start switching back and forth more quickly from Van Gogh's painting to my selfie. Okay, but first let's start to really add some green. Now, I'm still using my yellow oxide. Ooh, that is too dark. And that is too bright. This is like the Goldilocks situation here. Okay. So I do a lot of adjusting as I paint. Now, a lot of paintings are built working from a darker layer to a brighter layer. And even though I'm starting to add a little bit of phthalo blue, I'm still having a little bit of ultramarine as well. Because this painting is dominated by green and blue, it does help if I have more variation. So typically I'll have 2 different pigments to choose from in my painting for whatever sort of the dominant tones in my painting are. I like to work with a limited palette. Yikes. That is blue. Okay. But when I look at Van Gogh's painting, you probably can't see. Maybe if I lift this up. There's some real blue tones coming through in some of his line work. It's a little bit muted. Okay. Telling you it's muted right as I make it really bright, but that's all right. I'm just going to send a little bit of yellow oxide right in there. And I'm just going to really shape this as I go. Having established some of these more pink and orange colors in my painting is going to be handy so that the green doesn't just dominate everything. Now, when I printed this painting out from the internet, I actually found the highest resolution one that I could, but I noticed that there were quite a few different versions in terms of the color. Now, because I'm new to filming myself making paintings, I'm not quite sure how accurate my color is. I might have to adjust my light temperature. But just in terms of copying the colors, I think it's good to remember that I'm not exactly sure how this painting looks in person. So I chose the one that I guessed was most accurate. Typically, paintings that you would find, JPEGs that you might find on a museum website, are going to be more accurate than other alternatives. I think I got this one from Wikipedia, but it's kind of a crapshoot, but it seems good. And either way, I found the colors to be pretty interesting. And you might notice I'm not staying in any one area of my painting for very long. I'm continuing to build up my value. And my hair is much darker than Vincent's was. I went through phases of having dark blue and blue-green hair for a few years. So this is a bit of a blast from the past. But I could take this blue and make it look more brown if I just throw some magenta and yellow. Whenever I have my three primaries come together, I start to have more of a neutral. When that neutral is more dominated by blue, I'll get gray tones, at least if there's white in the mixture. If it's more dominated by yellow and red, I'm going to get things that are more brown or beige if there's white in the mixture. But with this painting, you know, the color is more psychological, and so I'm more concerned with value. Okay. Oops. Now if I make a mistake, I don't let that concern me. We have many other things to worry about in this life. So painting is like a puzzle that we're trying to solve. And if we figured it out all at once, then that would not be as fun. Okay. So, this brush is a little bit large for what I'm trying to do here. And I think in a minute I'm actually going to have to go back to my picture of myself. Sorry guys. Sorry Vincent. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. And I'm going to continue shaping things. Now, I'm going to be kind of building up some of my dark tones even a little bit more than they look like in my painting or in my source image. But I can always put some lighter tones right into the wet paint to kind of shift things. And even though I've been working with some of these greens, I'm still going to go back to my yellows and violets. I'm not using any of my colors straight. I'm always mixing. And right now I'm going to be really highlighting the darker areas because it's going to be a good idea for me to have my lightest highlights more on the surface. Now for my dark tones, I have my magenta, and phthalo blue is actually a little bit darker than the ultramarine, which is one reason I needed to use it. Another dark blue that I think is really nice is anthraquinone blue, which is kind of similar to Prussian blue with oil paint. It's just a very dark, inky blue. But it's kind of like a navy. Whereas the phthalo has such a strongly turquoise undertone. Well, at least if I'm looking a little scary in this painting, I've got some interesting mermaid hair. And apparently I just ran out of magenta on my palette. Anytime I run out of a color, I immediately get it back on there. That's one of the mistakes I notice a lot when I am teaching in the classroom, is that a lot of times students do not keep all of their different pigments that they're using active on their palette, and it starts to kind of mess up their color mixing. And normally I wouldn't be putting my hand right in my painting, but okay. I don't normally work flat either. All right. And I'm just approaching this nice and delicately. And I don't want to ignore my neck. I'm just kind of bouncing around through the painting. One thing that I do, and in another demo I'll focus a little bit more on the palette and the mixing, is I will pick up different colors off my palette onto my brush all at once so that I can do some mixing right on my canvas. Now, I noticed in Vincent's portrait that his shadow side, all his shadows were just really green. Unfortunately, I have a little shadow right here. And let's see. Don't want to forget about my eyebrow. And the contour of my brow just needs a little adjustment as well. The eyes, you'll notice, are not actually white. They're actually gray. The eye that's in the darker side of my face, the white of my eye is still too dark. So I'm just kind of making like a mental note of that. I'm gonna make sure to go back and correct that. Now, one of the things that's so tricky about portraiture is that small adjustments really make a huge difference. So I'm gonna go back into this in a few, and we will continue on. Hopefully in the next section I will actually finish. We'll see. Thanks, guys.